Hello, my name is Carsten Zimmermann. I'm your trainer today of the SCIP Database webinar, and we have to wait 2 minutes for all of these people who come to our webinar. So we start in 2 minutes. Okay, so we start. Hello and welcome to our SCIP Database webinar. My name is Carsten Zimmermann and I'm your trainer today of this webinar. I am more than 10 years by IMDS professional as a trainer for seminars and webinars. And so we heard over the last months about the new SCIP database of the European Parliament and the European Chemical Agency. And that's the reason why we go in deep to this database and this requirement behind that. And so we have some information for you, and this is what we want to give you today in our webinar. Okay, we have 45 minutes today, and I think we need a half hour or a little bit more for the all the pages. If you have questions, you can write me the questions in our GoToWebinar tool or over the chat tool, and then we can answer these to the end of this webinar. And if you have more questions or you have tomorrow a question, then I give you the email address, my email address, so that you can send it to us, and we look to your question, and then we have a newsletter by IMDS Professional, and then we answer your questions in the newsletter. Okay, I hope you see my screen. You are all mute because we have more than 65 people here in this webinar, so there are too much noise if you are not on mute. Okay, a little bit about IMDS Professional. IMDS Professional is a full service company for IMDS, and we have the experience and the IMDS know-how since 1999. So as the European car manufacturers started to create with the EDS database specialist to create IMDS. So this was a start for us to say, okay, we start with IMDS and with the training, with the service. We have more than 18,000 participants and trained over the last 20 years. And we have all over the Europe, the training locations with native speakers. And we are authorized by DXC technology for the training database. And we have with our native speakers in Europe, we can have the communication in 8 languages. We make public trainings. This is like today we have a topic and you can say, okay, I want to know more about this topic. Or you say, okay, I want to have a training in our company, for example, with the quality department, engineering department, sales, purchasing. And then we go in deep in your IMDS process, and then you have the best process for your company, and all the departments have a high knowledge about IMDS and which information is have to be required by supplier, and who have something to do in this process. And we have on the other side, we have the service for IMDS. So if you decide to make outsourcing of IMDS work, so we are one company who can make this service for you, that you have nothing to do with IMDS, and we do the creation, the accepting or rejecting by supplier, and the discussions with your customer. And the last point of this slide is that we have a new trade name in by IMDS Professional. This is Compliance Professional for non-automotive. So we started with IMDS and all the requirements from the car manufacturers, but in the last years we have more and more requests from other companies outside from the automotive, and they requested, oh, could you help us, could you train us, and so on. That is the reason why we have Compliance Professional. Okay, you see my colleague by IMDS Professional uploaded the PDF, the PowerPoint file for you, that you have this presentation, and you get, after this training, you get a link to this video, and then you have all these informations which I speak, and all these slides and your questions in this link. So this is also the first question. Yes, you have this presentation. Okay, then this is also for non-automotive compliance professional. We have here for SCIP and REACH outside the automotive, for the restriction of hazardous substances in electrical and electronic equipment. This comes in the last 2 months more in focus because of the new creation of printed circuit boards according the Rec 19 in IMDS. So in the future you cannot use these flat bombs. So that this, because we wrote it here, as an old regulation, older regulation. We have here other topics for training and service: conflict minerals, and the cobalt minerals comes from the Dodd-Frank Act in the US, and also the new regulation in the European area about conflict minerals. Biocides, and the other software tool from HP or DXC is CDX, Compliance Data Exchange. But for this database, I will say you some slides later more. Okay, the overview of today is that we have a new, because it's for you, new waste frame directive in the European area. And we have here the interpretation of this waste frame directive, and then we who's concerned, and the scope of this directive, and the task of the European agency, European Chemical Agency, and the timeline of the implementation of this directive and the database. And what is very important, what is to reportable. We have here the REACH regulation, and I hope you know the REACH regulation, because we have these more than 10 years. And we have the once an article, always an article definition, and also the article free to report the substance of very high concern. And this is the next point, SVHC, substance of very high concerns in products. So, and what has to be done now? Reporting to SCIP. What is SCIP? Then we have 6 steps of SCIP, which informations are required, and there are different data formats to report, and which solutions you have. And then to the end, I have a little bit about our services and our further webinars to this topic. And this is then the time for your questions. Okay, there we have here 3 definitions of the ECHA, the European Chemical Agency in Helsinki. This agency is created in the past to the REACH regulation, according to the registration of substances in the European area, and then all the tasks behind this and all these informations to substances. And in 2018, we have a new Waste Frame Directive. And in this Waste Frame Directive, we have the paragraph 9. And this is the requirement in this paragraph regarding the SCIP database, or a database, for example, for consumers. And we have the SVHC definition. This is a substance of very high concerns. These are really toxic substances, and we have these in the European area in products and in mixtures. And I hope you know these substance of very high concern, because we have the article 3.3 paragraph 1, in which you have to inform your customer immediately if you have these substances higher than 0.1 weight percent in articles or mixtures. This is not a request, or your customer has to request this information about the substances. You have to give your customer directly this information. And what is very important, since 2015, that there was a decision in the European area that we have 05A, once an article, always an article. That means if you buy a sealing ring by your supplier, and in this sealing ring is an SVHC substance is higher than 0.1 weight percent in this article, and you put this O-ring or the sealing ring in your product, then you have to report your customer then according to this subcomponent into your assembly. And that is the meaning of 05A, so that O-ring or sealing ring is an article and stay an article in all these use cases. And then here is a SCIP database. SCIP is the database for information about SVHC, substance of very high concern, and SCIP means substances of concern in articles as such, or in complex articles, products, under the new Waste Frame Directive. So that is substance concern in products is the SCIP name. And what is behind that? Companies that supply articles, and the articles contain substance of very high concern from the candidate list. This is a list about more than 200 substances, SVHC substances, in a concentration above 0.1 weight percent, weight by weight, to the EU market will have to submit information on these articles to ECHA from the 5th of January next year. So that's very important. At the moment, you have no task. but to the next year in January, you have to fulfill this requirement behind the Waste Frame Directive. And this is not something what your customer have to send you, that you have to fulfill this requirement. No, this directive comes to you directly. The Waste Frame Directive is not a direct directive to you, but in the middle of this year, in June or July, we have in each European country an own legislation directive to these waste frame directive, so that you have to fulfill this requirement. If you have an SVHC substance in your article, that you have to report this information in SCIP. So the next is the SCIP database ensures that the information on articles containing substances on the candidate list, and the candidate list is very important, will change 2 times in a year, to the beginning of the year in January and in June or July. So you have new substances of very high concern. So the information in the database is then made available to waste operators, so that the waste operators know which substances and toxic substances are in which article and component, and for the consumers. This is also very important to the paragraph 3.3.2. This is the SVHC substances are for the consumer, that they know if they buy a product, is in this product an SVHC substance. So, and this is a timeline of the SCIP database, and what is for the European Chemical Agency. In July 2018, we have the new Waste Frame Directive, and into the beginning of the year, this year, on the end of February, we had the new prototype of the database is activated. So every company can registrate by these database and can test this database, but it is not really a good released database, or this is only a prototype. So in the middle of this year, we have national implementation of the Waste Frame Directive. And on the end of October, we have the publication of the database for the release and preparation. So then is the database in a status that you can use and work with it, and that you can make your preparation to the SCIP requirement. And then in January next year, suppliers of articles are now obligated to submit information to the database. And if you want to see, I have here the information SCIP, and I send you now in the chat of GoToWebinar the link for you of this database, and I will change it so that you have here this SCIP prototype, and then you can register to log into this prototype if you want it. Okay, this comes on the next slide, the required information. So at this status, there is a new requirement from law that you have to fulfill a database. Then this database is from the European Chemical Agency, and you have to go in the database if you have mixtures or articles, products which have an SVHC substance in it. So then that is the first point that you have to know. If you have this substance in your article, then you have to fulfill this required information. You have an article name. This is at the moment this is free text. Then you have a primary article identifier. That is something which will come new for us. There, if you know this TAREC code, this is a code in the European area for products, so that it will be the article identifier. Then you have a lot of article categories, so that you say, okay, this is an article for the automotive industry, for example. And again, and this is very important for you, SCIP is not a car manufacturer's database, is not only for electrical and electronic equipment. This is for all industries in the European area. Then you have to give the information, is the production in the European Union? If it's necessary, the safe use information. Then if you have a link to the article, a number of the units in this complex object, so in the assembly, then the version of the candidate list, the candidate list substance, the name or the CAS number, and the concentration range. So if you have only 0.1%, then you have the first, or you have more than 20%. You have here the other information. And this is at first, this is for information for you. There we have a IUCLID format. This data format has been launched with the REACH registration. This is a tool to make the registration for substances in the REACH directive. This is a software tool for the Haradas properties of chemical substances, and this could be collected, stored, and so on. This was the first format of the Azure, and this will be also something which come to us by the SCIP database. But this is only one format which we can use. I will come on the next slides to give you more information. What are the 6 steps for SCIPs which comes from the European Chemical Agency? To find out if you needed to send the SCIP notification. This is what you can do one time, but you hear from me that the candidate list updates 2 times in a year, so that you ask your suppliers, or you have an own database, CDX, IMDS, or other software tools which are on the market, to identify, have I to give this information to the SCIP database. Know and understand the information which are required. Do you know your article portfolio for your company, for your daughter companies, and so on? And you know which articles, this is all 2-step free, comes from European suppliers and which comes from outside the European area. Customize your data, prepare your submissions, and to the end, send your notification. There are here some more information that you can analyze which SVHC substances are in these products, and you can ask your supplier in European and outside the European area. You know the border of 0.1% weight by weight in products, and then think about once an article, always an article. So non-EU suppliers may not send the report. So if you have suppliers outside Europe, then you have to give the information to the SCIP database. And here is one substance which comes in the last 2 years or 1.5 years, more and more in the focus of the Azure and the Article free, because lead is an SVHC substance, and we have a lot of aluminium, brass, and steel components and products in the European area. And for all these products, you have to give the information into the SCIP database. So that is a lot of workload. No one understands the information which are required, so that you know these required information: article name, primary article identifier, category according the TARIC code, candidate list version, and so on. But there are some information which are optional. For example, a picture, dimensions, color, weight, and so on. If you have this information, you can give this to this database. Here, do you know your article portfolio? Which articles contain these substances? How is the intended use and the bill of material? This is also for packaging material and transportation components. That is something different to the IMDS system, because in the IMDS system is normally only these components which stay in the vehicle. Here are more than, for example, the packaging material. Then you have to know which articles you sold to your customer. That is sometimes is that easy for the automotive industry, because you have one customer for one product or 10 customers for one product, and these customers get these parts 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or something like this. In other industries, if there you sold these 400 products to this customer, and next week 200 to this customer, they have more to do in this database, because you have to identify the customer in this database, so that the customers can use your data. And we hope that we can use the data from suppliers in the SCIP database, and makes it like IMDS, that you use received information from your suppliers and then use it for your data and send it to your customer. We hope it, and we see this in October, if the database is in this status, which we can prepare us and our customers. Customize your data. You can start now to collect all these informations which are required, for example, direct code or other information. At the moment, they are by the prepare of your submission, there are 3 ways: online, offline, or system to system. We hope that we know in October more about this, how to report, and how are these 3 ways to report to the SCIP database. And then send your notification is the last step, and there come more guidelines in the next months for that. Companies have some subsidiaries who have to give this information, each subsidiary by own, or have the headquarter to do it. Then the trademark owner have to give these informations, or what is with consultants like IMDS Professional, and very important, the reference to reported articles. And this is something which we have in the future with the TARIC code. Know the solutions. IMDS and CDX are 2 solutions for material compliance and full material declarations. And there we have a lot of sub-tools in IMDS, but we heard from our contacts by DXC that IMDS and CDX will get a function to the SCIP database to report these information from IMDS or CDX to these SCIP database. But at the moment, it's not clear for us who will pay for it, because this is a new function and the new function is not without any costs. We hope by IMDS that the costs are will pay by the automotive industry, but we will see it in the next 3 or 4 months, which is how is this solution by IMDS and CDX. Okay, then it's a good topic about the solutions by IMDS and CDX. If we have new information about SCIP and the database, and then also the solutions by IMDS and CDX, we will make a new webinar to give you, as one of our customers, the information which we have. And also the very important for us is a service, because this is a new topic for all companies, for the whole supply chain in each industry, and there could be a lot of workload. We heard about that a simple component will take 5 minutes to submit the data, and complex articles and assemblies will take a half hour or an hour to create the data. So we hope that it's not so much workload, but we will have a good service and we can prepare and collect the data for you. So then I said it in the beginning, if you have questions, please write it to me over the system. Go to webinar, please. So the first question is, so an article is in your example the ceiling ring. Yes, there are some definitions by the REACH and Waste Frame Directive that if you have a product which have a dimension, for example, then it is a product and not a mixture. So a ceiling ring is an article. And this is the first article. If you put this ceiling ring in your connecting system, and then you have an article in an article. And if you use this connecting system in an engine, for example, then you have 3 steps of articles, but the reporting area, reporting position for the SVHC substance is the ceiling ring. And I hope there's a question, what is product 05A? What's the meaning? Once an article, always an article. That this information, what I said to the ceiling ring is that if you have this ceiling ring in your assembly, that you have to report the ceiling ring and not the information according the connecting system. So the first position is very important. It is correct to say IMDS is sent to customer and SCIP is sent to the local government. No, SCIP is for the customers, also like IMDS. IMDS is more than to recyclable and recyclability of vehicles and not to use heavy metals, for example, like lead, chromium 6, cadmium, and so on. So SCIP is for the waste operators to the end of life of the product and the consumers. But you have to give the information to your customer, that the customer uses this information for his reporting. And then it goes in supply chain to the consumer and waste operator. I will go back. I have a question to slide here. This is the concentration range, and here was a question, makes it sense from 0.1% to less than 100%? In my meaning, no. And I hope that I have not these these concentration range in one of my components which I get from suppliers. But this is at the moment the information which we have. So yes, sometimes the supplier can use this concentration range, but for me it makes no sense. Is Euclid software necessary to put the data in SCIP? Not at the moment. There are an online tool, for example, in which you can use it. I will go. Here, then you can use it, an online tool, and then you have not to install the Euclid software on your computer, so that you can test. And if you register to the SCIP prototype database, then you can see how to work it with an online system. But it's not at the moment not a good prototype. IMDS include all information we should report in SCIP. All information not, because you have an article identifier like a Tariq code, and this will come from you. And this is something which we have to give new in the IMDS system in the future. And 1 or 2 months ago, I have a good conversation with DXC, who is the owner of the IMDS and CDX database, who said, okay, we want to implement a tool in IMDS and CDX, but if there are higher information required by SCIP, then you have to fill in this information in the IMDS system to report to the SCIP database. Are the consequences of failure to comply with the new directive known to date? These are local consequences for each country. So we have in Germany other consequences, like, for example, in Belgium, for example. So there are local consequences. But it's the same like today with the REACH Article 3.3 requirement. We heard not really much about consequences regarding the REACH. So if nobody is there to check the data, there's nobody who can give you the consequence. Is the registration in SCIP for free? Yes. There are no costs behind that. If we do not have products containing SVHC, do we have to register and report to SCIP? No. If you know that you have no SVHC substance in your products, and please think about that 2 times in a year this SVHC candidate list updated, then if you have no substances in your product and you know of your European supplier inform you regarding SVHC substances, that you have not to register and report to SCIP. Yes, sorry, I will. Can I use IMDS to find out if I need to send a SCIP notification? Yes, you can use in IMDS where use analyze under functions to find out the SVHC substance in your articles and assemblies. So that is if you not know how to find this solution or this function, please write me an email. This is too much to show in these next minutes. But yes, IMDS is very good to identify the SVHC substances. Okay. I work for a company that produce EEE, electrical and electronics equipments for automotive sector, OEMs, and so on. If my understanding is correct, customers responsible fulfill the SCIP database. Is it correct? No, not only. So each manufacturer in the supply chain have to give the information to the SCIP database, the same like IMDS. So in IMDS, without the information from the supplier side, the customers and the OEMs cannot create this information for a type approval and recyclability of cars. So the OEMs have to fulfill the requirements for the waste operators, yes, but each supplier of SVHC substances in their products have to fulfill the requirement too. From the 5th of January 2021, there a deadline timing to document a SCIP database? Yes, we have to fulfill this requirement on the 5th of January. So that is the reason why we have from October the database, and then you can make the preparation of your articles to fulfill this requirement. And yes, I know this is not really so much time. If you are a distributor of articles, you still need to report SCIP even touch the suppliers in the EU, right? You have to fulfill this requirement if you have an SVHC substance in your product. If you are a distributor of an article from a EU supplier, yes, you have to give this information to your customer. If you have a supplier outside the European Union, then you have to request the supplier or you have to make a contract, supplier contract with this information about SVHC substance. But this is not new. This is the same like REACH Article 3.3. This is nothing new for these for the outside suppliers. So you are an importer of article, so you have to give this information about this SVHC substance to your customer and next year to the SCIP database. So there are a lot of questions, but there are not really time for all. So if your supplier has products with SVHC, does it mean he has to make SCIP notification or we? You both. Your supplier have to give this information into the SCIP database and have these gives the information that you are the customer of this product, and you put this component in the SCIP database to your article and give this information to your customer. The same like an IMDS, but only here, not for the whole bill of material, so only for the component which have an SVHC substance. So that you know which customer you have and your supplier know that you are the customer, so that you have the connection in the supply chain. Who's going to review if the data sent to SCIP is compliant and reflecting the requirements? So you have the mandatory requirements in the SCIP database, and if you have if you make something wrong, then your customer have to check it. but this is the same questions like 5 minutes ago with a consequence. At the moment, it's not clear who checked the data. Is there the HR as a chemical agency with all the people behind that, or is there an external company who checked the data? At the moment, it's not clear. So I see that we have more than 10 open questions and the time is over. What I will do is that I copy these questions and send it to our newsletter, and we will answer these in the next days, weeks with a newsletter about SCIP. So I hope, and then I go to the last slide. I hope I could give you a lot of information about SCIP, the timeline by SCIP, which informations are required, and so on. And I think we will make in the next months, next 2 months, a new webinar with more information if we have this information. And I hope that you have now the first step by SCIP and the SCIP database to know how you can prepare your company to do this. If you have any question, please write us an email. We can make exclude webinars for you to give you more information regarding your products and, for example, with your IMDS account, and then what you have to do in the next months for the SCIP database. So thank you for your time, and you will get after this webinar the link to the video, and I hope this was enough for you today. Thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.